Atari was, I think, the epitome of the 70s Silicon Valley company. I mean, we sort of defined that kind of a lifestyle of not wearing suit and ties and still doing serious business, making money, a less regimented approach. And we treated our people very well because we realized that our assets went home every night.
We didn't care when they went to work. If they wanted to come in at noon and leave at midnight, that was okay. It was all about a true meritocracy.
You want to be successful. The single most important thing that you have to be is a doer.
It was also the time of big money and big business, and Atari followed suit when Bushnell sold the company to Warner Communications.
The decision to sell it was as much out of fatigue as anything else.
For a while, it was a honeymoon, but as things progressed, they became uncomfortable with our kind of crazy management style and our parties and all the fun we were having making money.
But even with the new management, the Atari Brain Trust continued to move technology forward and began work on their first home console system, the Atari VCS.
What we had done with Pong was made a dedicated chip. That chip would only play Pong. And to build another game, we had to build a whole new chip. And every time you build a chip, it took about 9 months of engineering effort. So we had our research group up in Grass Valley create in 3 months the prototype for what became the VCS.
The VCS was renamed the Atari 2600. And after licensing Space Invaders from Taito in 1980, it flew to the top of every kid's Christmas wish list.
With the Atari, it was really like bringing the arcades home.
I got it for Christmas, and I sat down and played it so much that my dad's girlfriend had to come by and basically remind me that it's been 2 days later and I have to take a bath.
Atari made up to $100 million off of each of its titles. But the new corporate environment of Atari was slowly crushing the artistic foundation upon which it was built.
It's really interesting. There became a lot of anger between Atari management, especially after it was taken over by Warner, and the programmers, because you get paid $16,000 to $20,000 a year and you'd make the games all by yourself. And as these games became more and more profitable, there started to be a feeling among the game designers of why aren't we getting credit?
I'm afraid of empowering people. You know, I believe that people deserve their value in the marketplace. And so it was this real hierarchy that developed that we tried very hard to not have at Atari before.
Well, shortly thereafter, 4 of the guys left and formed a company called Activision and started selling their own cartridges, which were pretty good. And that became the end of the monopoly that Atari had.
I just became unbearable to the Warner management because I started calling them dumb and this is really not a good thing to do to guys who were from New York and wear suits. And it culminated in a board meeting in fall, and I quit. Quote, was fired the following January.
Certainly Bushnell's life is better because of it, at least financially, but he is locked out of the business he started.
Atari still believed that being the biggest fish in a capitalist sea would keep the revenue rolling. Just like the financial swell of the 80s, they felt it was never going to end.
Success for Atari came so easy to the people that were calling the shots that they didn't feel like they needed to be careful, or they didn't need to be smart anymore.
Atari lost it.
The Atari video computer system.
Once you turn creativity into just marketing muscle, things get very dangerous because people get bored.
The game that a lot of people talk about is there was a version of E.T. made in 1983 that was so bad that Al Alcorn, who programmed Pong, who worked for Atari, says that he literally cried when he saw it.
The chairman of Warner cut a deal with Steven Spielberg where we paid him, I forget, a huge amount, $10 million or something.
It was created for cheap, very quickly, in no time, just to get it out and rush to market. Kids flocked to stores and bought this title and quickly found that what they loved on the big screen was terrible on the small screen.
Apparently, there were so many of these cartridges that we couldn't sell. We had to get rid of them somehow. And they wound up in a landfill, and the word got out, and then Atari then covered it over with cement to keep them out and denying and said the cartridges were defective. Well, they were defective because we couldn't sell them. And so, yeah, it got pretty ugly towards the end.
Sales of Atari video games dropped off sharply. Somehow, Atari products...
1983 was the year of the great crash. In the late 70s, basically, when you talk to people who are making games at that point, they will say that making a game, you basically threw a game up in the air and you just waited for the money to fall down. So what you saw is that everybody tried to get in the market. You had so many competitors, you had dozens and dozens of companies. Public was deluged with games, and so many of them were so bad that it just turned the public off entirely to the medium.
No matter how great the graphics sounds are, still there's something a little bit boring right now about shooting a Martian or something.
The big crash. Not since 1929 has an industry fallen so far, so fast. The victim of oversaturation and changing...
In the end, the lack of quality games for the 2600 and the influx of games on home computers were too much. The gaming industry had matured into a legitimate business, but like any business, it was boom or bust.
If you don't obsolete yourself, somebody else will. And then Atari did die a sudden and painful and loud death, but I knew it was dead for me in 1981. It just took till 1983 for it to catch up with them and happen.
Stupid. I made more money shorting Warner stock, because I saw it coming, than I did on selling the company. No, that's a lie. But I did pretty well on shorting their stock, not more than.